I welcome the chance to have the thrill of a little tingling of fear of failure. Otherwise, it wouldn't be thrilling. I believe I gave up ambition a long time ago. I believe there's no such thing as ambition. I believe there's accomplishment. When I grew up, I think I was a very private little girl. I had been raised as a proper young lady and to live by more rules than you can possibly imagine. My father was a banker and we lived in somewhat of a upper middle class ambience. He owned half of in an airplane, and we put on the caps and all that. And the man who was the other owner liked to show off, and we did lots of stunts. Now, this is not an ordinary thing for a little girl to be doing, but I loved it. And so it went. I mean, all this childhood, you do the things that children do with their peers. Until there came a great difficulty in the house. Sad times came along. My mother had great troubles mentally, and things took a bad turn. The airplanes were gone, and the pilots were gone, the fun was gone, everything was gone. I was left alone a lot, and she was someplace, and he was someplace else, and I was with the maid. There was a great loneliness because I had no one to whom I could really express myself. And I sought means by which to survive. I was quite lucky that finally I found painting and that I could express myself. I was a very, very good draftsman. I drew faces that were immaculately drawn, which I won a scholarship from to go away to school. And that was really the first encouragement that I had outside of my family. My mother was my encouragement. She always said that my art would be my best friend. I went to the Art Students League, and I worked as a model to do that. I actually didn't have a means of making a livelihood except a very small amount that I could bring in from modeling. When I first went to Mexico, a roommate of mine from school and I went just for vacation, a 2-week vacation, and I stayed there totally 19 years. I was overwhelmed without knowing that I would be. I never dreamed that a life could be so different, that people could be so colorful, that they look so beautiful, that they move so much, that it was a totally different culture. And yet I felt akin to it some way. I felt that I had been waiting to go there, that I had arrived, that here I was at home. It was a very touching time. The idea that I was totally absorbed in something outside of myself made me become myself. It was as though for the first time I could forget the repressions at home. I was thrown into a situation of being in love with a country, being in love with a thing, an environment, total absorption, and all of the crises or whatever it is that I had upon me simply disappeared. There was this marvelous artist who was a teacher, and he had a wonderful studio, and he said, Dorothy, you can paint in my studio, and I will supply you with your food. Something for lunch, you see, and that was principally what I ate. And then I started painting, and I painted very, very hard and was very inspired. I met so many people who were vastly more cultured than I. This was the thing that got to me. Orozco was tremendously intense, and he always said, Dorothy, tell the truth at all costs, no matter what the cost is. He really was a moralist, a kind of a conscience. There were the surrealists, then there were the Mexicans, and then there were immigrants from totalitarianism, Spanish refugees, and all of this came on very, very strong within a short period of time, and it was a lot at the same time. I was totally in love with Mexico, yes. Yeah. We had a feeling that it would go on forever the way that it was. When I was married, I was very, very young, and he was a very beautiful person, a musician, very strong personality, very protective. I believe that this man had enough qualities to satisfy me, which he did. And it was a crisis, though, almost entering into his world, because it was a far more disciplined and confined world than the world in which I had lived before. My husband is South American, and he was extremely well known. He was one of the figures in music in Latin America, and he played some concerts for the United Nations with Toscanini's orchestra and the Hollywood Bowl, and quite a few concerts here and all through Central and South America. We did a lot of traveling at first. When I came to Houston this time, actually, it was time to come. Mexico was changing too fast. Something terrible was happening. Technology was taking hold of the people. My husband was very noble. He said, "We'll go back to your roots." And that's how I came back. I felt very isolated when we came back here. And of course, I had my husband. That was a great asset, because he was a thinker, and he was a beautiful person. He was a poet, and he was, so I had that. You see, that was a sort of a fortress. I have always to thank him for that, and I have always to make it now as nice for him as I can. Okay? Here. Take a napkin. I think and however millions of people who live in the world have all had difficult lives. I think I've met the challenge of it. I think I've met the challenge of the difficulty of it. Yes, it's been difficult to make a living by painting, but it's been done. It's been difficult to endure family illness for 20 years, but it's been done so far. Nick, we certainly did find a lot of marvelous things at the nursery, didn't we?
Yes, that's...
and I do it through my friends. Nick is one of the principal people who bring me the outer world, who bring me things of the mind, who also have their kindness, and who relieve me from what is quite a hard thing to do. To protect Velasco and to make his last years as well as they can be, and happy, and then that's a very valid friendship. Velasco. Hey, Velasco. ¿Qué te encuentras hoy? Esto es Max Ernst, el pintor Max Ernst. Don't believe that Velasco is going to speak to me this morning.
He can be very moody, yeah. At times, he can be very talkative.
Yes. Patience is simply endurance. Patience is seeing the longer view and trying not to extend to others the irritation that you may feel for being frustrated. It's a kind of kindness. It's a quality that I really don't have, and only lately am I learning. Well, since my private life is I work all the time, and then I go out and I see people in a convivial way, but on a limited basis.
That's a good one.
And I must then have only friends that I choose because they're very essential.
He certainly had a touch.
I have friends in Europe who call me on the phone very often and write to me and who express ideas to me and who happen to be connected with people whom I knew in Mexico. And since I don't travel back and forth to Mexico or to Europe very much, those things mean a lot to me. People who come in and who have contact with me from far-off places and from nearby places.
I really like this mauve or whatever it is.
In fact, it's one of the ones that I very most like. Very most like. Hey, Barbara.
Hey, Dorothy.
Barbara Rose has spent most of her life with artists. I mean, she's been married to a very prominent artist. She has children by the prominent artist. She's written about artists. She studies art. She's an art historian, so she knows the lives of artists. She's a gutsy person in a very overt, active way.
I'll say you had an imagination.
I don't know. I get very confused when people think it's fantasy. To me, it's real. For some reason, I see this as a face, a human face, and I've had people say, well, my goodness, that's an ape. Well, it doesn't look like an ape to me. It's a human face.
But you know, that's the surrealist thing. You know, the images that can be read in more than one way.
Sure.
I mean, if you look at it one way, it's a rock formation, or suddenly it becomes a face or a figure.
This really was the first drawing that I ever did that had anything with movement in outer space. I mean, here you go here this way, and you go something that's up in the air that's going this way, and this is going this way, and of course now that was made years before people were in outer space. You're with an art person, and you know you're with an art person. It's just like a baseball player, I suppose, or somebody that, oh my God, here you're with your kind of person, you know, you're with another baseball player, another soccer player, or another, whatever it is that one does, you know.
Now this, to me, really does relate to those drawings. I mean, that sense of what you say, the outer space. But the color is just beautiful.
This one is called Max's Moon.
Max's Moon. Who's Max?
Max Ernst.
Did you know Ernst?
I met him here in Houston, actually. I knew people who had even been married to him and everything in Mexico, but I never actually met him until the year before he died here in Houston. This painting, I mean, there were a lot of people that just hated this painting. I don't know why. They seemed to be that they don't like, they maybe thought it was snakes or maybe water moccasins or something, but the truth is I had been swimming a lot that summer, and so that kind of motion was entering into all my paintings.
It's also like a black hole in space. Disturbing.
Disturbing.
It's disturbing.
But
it's just not easy.
I really don't mind a painting being disturbing at all. In fact, I think that's a compliment in a way. I don't want to disturb people, but on the other hand, if they stick with it, maybe they can, they really can accomplish something by being a little disturbed, you know, mentally. I mean, you know, stir their imagination a bit and so forth.
Oh, wow. But you know, Dorothy, you started this, and there was a lot in it that I liked, but I think it's so much more complex now.
Yes, I think that, you know, it started out to be a painting that I feel comfortable and encouraged by Barbara. She has an eye. She's very interested in everything that I do, and her friendship is genuine. It's very comfortable.
The scale of the work, I mean, you use a lot of little elements which then make it seem even more vast. But basically, I mean, you're a painter of big pictures, really big paintings, which maybe for a woman is strange. But to get your...
No, it's not strange. I just feel better, that's all. Yeah, it just, it frees me, and that's one of the things that Texas has done for me. I feel the space that's in Texas. The space of Texas and the plains and the sky and everything frees me. It connects me with the sky, it connects me with the earth. Space really triggers me on. The weight, the feeling of the earth, the attraction of these enormous central figures, the colors in the oil, the refineries with the lights that look like constellations. You have every element for an artist there. I'll say the thing that's been most meaningful to me in Houston is that the people have been very good with me, and that they're open to see people come up. They've been good friends. They've supported me through long times. I mean, I've been here a long time, and I've had consistent support, and I can't think of very many places where you can get that. It's an old-fashioned thing to say, but I value goodness, and there's certainly many, most good people in this place.
Yeah, that tissue paper stuff that you did in those was, thought was wonderful.
Anything, I mean, I collage anything. I think when you can get something that's very acute to your heart or to your memory, there's no doubt that there's a shadow of it or a shade of it, or it appears, you know. I mean, it comes through. There's no doubt about that. This is kind of a garish looking thing, so it might best be somewhere near this. The last thing is really the thing that says it. You see. Sometimes the idea is to throw on something that's completely idiotic, something that's completely impossible, hoping that it'll work, and sometimes it works. Mostly it doesn't, but not right. If you make a mistake when you're painting, either you're going to paint over it or you're going to have to make a total revision, and that means lots of worrying with the material and so forth. And here you can change constantly until you get it right, and so of course that's more pleasurable in a way. I mean, this is, to me, this is not a hard art. It's just sheer joy. That's all. Painting is a complete commitment. I mean, your philosophy, your emotional attunement, your conquest of life, your physical conquest, everything goes unified into a painting. It's far more thrilling. I mean, this is fine, and it's just wonderful what you have afterwards. And there's a certain, even at the most, you put, you know, newspaper clippings that made a lot of sense to you, and things that meant a lot to you. But it's a little memory. It's a little memory. And painting's the thing, you know. That's the thing you're doing. I have never thought about what my art should communicate or what I would like it to communicate. I think it's a total accident that it communicates anything at all. Each painting is an experience, and that whatever my experience is, it rings true. So far as I ring true, it evokes something in the public. I'm not trying to evoke anything in the public, but I am trying to ring true in what I paint. And I always think that a painting should have something like a second view. I mean, that if a painting is a first view painting, in the end people will get very tired. And if they discover things, or if it has some kind of depth, they'll grow very attached to it. When I look at paintings, and I've seen so many paintings in my lifetime, and I think of the color, and then I think of what Rothko said, that he said if all they see is the color, then that painting has been a failure. And then I look at the paintings that are done, and I think of the paintings that have so very much to offer, and I wonder how much is really perceived of the experience that's behind the color. Day to day, I get up and I always look forward to what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm ready to go because I love what I do so much that's the thing that I want to do before I do anything else. And truly, there are a lot of things that I do that I don't want to do, but so long as I can do that the first thing in the morning, my day is made. I almost like a silence when I paint. I mean, I almost like the sound to come from the colors. And I certainly want a silence in order that I can concentrate without interruption. I don't play the radio, or I don't put the TV on, and there's a calm and there's a wall, and I know that I'm together with my thoughts, and that everything can be still while I go ahead with the color, which is a sound, that everything then can come out of the painting. I get a tremendous thrill out of working. I was a born worker, and the act of working to me, I mean, I see a workman out working or something like that. I think, oh my God, I admire that person so much. And I get a tremendous thrill out of painting. The act of painting is just, it's more exciting than anything that I could possibly do. I like to take risks because I've always been a risky person. I don't like a humdrum, methodical kind of life, and since my life is my painting, I like to take risks. And also, risks are not really risks. Risks are things that are discovered as you go along. It's all a thing. One thing flows into another, and one sees a thing done in one painting, and you think, well, I wonder if I could pull that off in a larger way in another painting. So it's a matter of growth and also character. My character is risky. I think that I went into abstract because I believe that one can express one's inner life so much more clearly in abstract. You're looking at the outside of things when you're doing representational, but you look at the inside of things when you're doing abstract. I'd like there to be something evoked. I mean, some strong emotion that people will halt before them and say, oh, what is this? I mean, it seems to strike something, you don't know what it is. It has some gut feeling, and it has these colors, and it has this emotion, whatever it is. And then when they take it home or when they see it in a museum, that they won't just come back to see colors, and they won't come back just to see form, that they will come back to see an experience, and that each time they see it, they'll see something more into it, which really will be me. I was very lucky that I found painting and that it absorbed me totally, and that I have something that I do that I earn my living from it, and it's something I prefer to do than anything else in the world. I mean, I do it for pleasure, I do it for experience, I do it for risk, I do it for accomplishment, and it's always there. It can never be taken away from me. I mean, it's my friend. And in this, I've been very, very lucky. There is a kind of aloneness about it, but that's okay.